This is Ashwood Park, in the heart of Columbus, Ohio. On this bench, on the afternoon of October 14th, a 16-year-old boy named Isaiah Washington took his last breath. He wasn't a star athlete with a scholarship waiting. He wasn't a gang enforcer. He was a quiet kid with a sketchbook, a boy who preferred the company of charcoal and paper to people. His death, a single, precise gunshot wound to the head, would have been just another statistic, another inner-city shooting destined for a brief mention on the local news, if not for the person who pulled the trigger. The shooter was 10-year-old Lila Esposito, a fourth grader at Crestview Elementary. She approached Isaiah as he sketched, raised a handgun she had concealed in that unicorn backpack, and fired from less than 3 feet away. She then placed the weapon back in her bag, walked calmly to a nearby water fountain, took a drink, and sat on a swing set, waiting. There was no screaming, no running, no emotion whatsoever. She simply waited for someone to notice what she had done. The story of why she did it, a story of a different kind of gang, a different kind of territory, and a weaponization of childhood so profound it would challenge the very definition of innocence, begins not with a turf war, but with a foreclosure notice. Ashwood Park was like many such spaces in post-industrial American cities, a place of stark contrasts. On one side, the meticulously maintained Friends of Ashwood Gardens, the restored bandstand that hosted summer concerts for young professionals. On the other, the crumbling basketball courts, the dense thicket of woods known locally as the Brambles, and the network of paths that served as a neutral ground for transactions that didn't appear on any park map. The city liked to tout Ashwood's renaissance, but it was a fragile one. Beneath the surface of community farmers markets and yoga classes festered a deep-seated conflict, not between traditional gangs, but between two opposing forces reshaping urban America: aggressive gentrification and the desperate, entrenched poverty it was displacing. The shooting occurred in the neutral zone between these two worlds. Isaiah Washington lived in the low-income apartment complexes that bordered the park's west side. Lila Esposito lived in a newly renovated, expensive townhouse on the gentrifying east side. They were neighbors in geography, but inhabitants of different universes. Isaiah Washington was, by all accounts, an old soul. The youngest of 5 brothers, he was the quiet one. Where his older siblings had navigated the pressures of their neighborhood with swagger and, in some cases, minor brushes with the law, Isaiah found his escape in art. His teacher, Mr. Davidson, called him the most naturally gifted student I've had in 20 years. He saw a future for Isaiah at the Columbus College of Art and Design. It was a dream Isaiah held close, a fragile thing he protected. His mother, Lena Washington, worked 2 jobs, as a home health aide by day and a cleaner in downtown offices by night. She spoke of Isaiah with a mixture of pride and worry. "The world is hard for soft boys," she would tell her sister. "He sees too much. He feels too much." Isaiah's sketches were a diary of his neighborhood. He drew the tired faces of the elderly men playing chess, the frantic energy of the children, the hollow-eyed look of those lost to addiction. And sometimes he drew things he wasn't supposed to see. Lila Esposito was the only child of Marco and Chloe Esposito. From the outside, they were the picture of the new urban success story. Marco, a sharp, ambitious real estate developer, had made a fortune buying up distressed properties around Ashwood Park, renovating them, and selling them to a new class of affluent residents. Chloe, a former marketing executive, now ran the Ashwood Forward community group, dedicated to making the park safe and beautiful for everyone. Lila was quiet, polite, and unnervingly precise. Her 4th grade teacher noted that she had the vocabulary of a middle schooler and an intense focus that was both impressive and disconcerting. She didn't have many friends, preferring the company of adults or her own imagination. She was, in the words of one neighbor, a perfect little doll. But dolls don't have thoughts, and Leela was always watching, always listening. The conflict that would culminate in murder began 6 months earlier, with a single property. 2417 Elm Street. A dilapidated but structurally sound three-family home owned by an elderly woman named Agnes Miller. Marco Esposito's company, Apex Urban Developments, had been trying to acquire it for over a year. It was the last holdout on a block he otherwise controlled. Its purchase was the key to a multi-million-dollar redevelopment plan. Agnes Miller refused to sell. She had lived there for 60 years. Her late husband had built the porch with his own hands. The Washingtons lived in the ground-floor apartment. Lena Washington helped Agnes with her groceries, checked on her daily. They were a family. To Marco, they were an obstacle. The pressure campaign began subtly at first. Ashwood Forward, led by Chloe Esposito, began petitioning the city for stricter code enforcement on neglected properties. 2417 Elm Street was suddenly cited for peeling paint, an overgrown hedge. Then the tactics escalated. Anonymous complaints were filed with Child Protective Services against Lena Washington, alleging neglect. They were unfounded, but terrifying. The Washingtons' car was vandalized. Their older boys were harassed by police for fitting a description. Through it all, Isaiah watched, and he drew. He drew the well-dressed man in the expensive car who kept coming to see Miss Agnes. He drew the woman with the perfect blonde hair handing out flyers that called his home a blight. He internalized his family's stress, his mother's exhausted tears. His art grew darker. The Espositos, meanwhile, were fighting a war on two fronts. The very gentrification they championed had attracted a rival developer, a ruthless corporation from out of state that was now outbidding them on key properties. Marco's empire, built on leverage and ambition, was teetering. He needed the Elm Street project to secure his loans. He became obsessed. The home, the Washington family, Agnes Miller, they were no longer people, they were problems to be solved. And Leela absorbed it all. The dinner table conversations were no longer about school or friends. They were about those people holding back progress, about greedy corporations, about how if that one house was gone, everything would be better. She heard her father say, his voice thick with whiskey and desperation, "I wish that whole damn problem would just disappear." She saw her mother's face, tight with anxiety, as she planned another community safety meeting that was, in reality, a strategy session against their neighbors. The Espositos, in their single-minded pursuit of a better life, as they defined it, had created a world of us versus them. They had drawn a battle line directly through Ashwood Park, and they had drafted their daughter as a soldier without ever realizing it. When Detective Marcus Thorne of the Columbus PD Homicide Unit arrived at Ashwood Park, the scene was chaos, but of a peculiar kind. There was no panicked crowd. Instead, families huddled in stunned, confused clusters. A girl was on a swing, swaying gently back and forth. It was Leela. First responders had found Isaiah Washington deceased, his sketchbook open on his lap. The drawing was a half-finished portrait of an old woman, Agnes Miller, her face a map of kindness and wrinkles. The single gunshot had been so precise, so clinical, that many witnesses initially thought it was a firecracker. It was the 911 call from Leela herself that broke the case open immediately. Audio of a 911 call plays. The voice is a child's, calm and clear. "Hello? My name is Leela Esposito. I'm at Ashwood Park, on the swings. I just shot the boy from the bad house. The gun is in my backpack. It's a unicorn backpack. You should probably come now." "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Can you repeat that?" "I shot the boy with the sketchbook." "Isaiah. My daddy's gun was in his office.
I put it back in my backpack. I'm ready to go home now. When officers approached Leela, she was preternaturally calm. She pointed to her unicorn backpack. Inside, wrapped in a child's sweater, was a 9mm Sig Sauer registered to Marco Esposito. There was no struggle, no tears. She held out her hands for handcuffs, having seen the procedure on television. Detective Thorne was a veteran. He had seen the results of gang initiations, crimes of passion, brutal acts of desperation. But this was something new. The age of the suspect, the methodical nature, the immediate confession, it defied all his experience. The initial evidence was perplexing. There was no connection between Leela and Isaiah. They went to different schools, lived in different worlds. There was no history of bullying